Last year, Gordon Bartleson began marketing the Little King barbed wire dispenser. It works on a counterbalance braking system, which stops the barbed wire from recoiling after it's pulled along a fence line. The invention has attracted interest from around New South Wales, and Gordon and K&C Harris of Morpeth have already sold 50 of the units. But a change in how some barbed wire is now being sold has forced Gordon to rethink his invention. Most barbed wire comes on a wooden frame, but a number of farmers in the Hunter Valley are starting to buy it on a square wire frame. It's cheaper that way, but it doesn't fit the Little King. So Gordon and Cole Harris from K&C Harris at Morpeth came up with a special adapter.
The adapter was something that I'd had in mind for some time, but I just didn't know what we were going to do about it. And I had to prove that metal would break the same on metal as the wood would. And I had in mind all the time, ever since Tokyo, that to try it I would nail these two plates onto the wooden reel and make sure it would break with metal against metal. And it worked. So then I brought it down here and I proved to the engineers here that it would. And they said, well, now we've got to get into it and make something to put through it, make the adapter.
Cole, just tell us briefly your involvement with Gordon and the Little King.
Well, Gordon come to us about 2 years ago to get a particular disc cut out and made up and some nuts welded on the back, and he took it away and did some work with it. And then 6 months later he come back and got us to weld a little bit of pipe on it, and we didn't know what it was about because it was very secretive. And he explained it to us one day when he come in that he'd got a device that works for running barbed wire. And we went out and had a look at it in the boot of the car, and that was about it. And then he come and asked if he could have a better one made, because the one that we originally made, he modified it and changed a few things and that sort of thing. So we made him up one that was quite presentable, and he took it away and that worked quite well, so he was pleased with that. So that was the start of the involvement with him.
Gordon says the adapter will be sold as an optional extra with his barbed wire dispenser, showing some local inventiveness, keeping the tangles out of barbed wire fencing.
The Bolshoi Ballet has long excited international audiences, and certainly this Australian tour has been no different. But today, as the dancers straggled off the plane, they were feeling the strain of what has been a gruelling 2.5-month tour.
The tour hasn't been very easy. Because we have been dancing every day, every night.
Но я хочу сказать, что это наша профессия.
But this is our profession.
И мы сюда приехали для того, чтобы работать.
And we have come here to work.
Newcastle is to be their last performance venue before they head back to the USSR. The company will present the entire second act of Giselle, along with selections from Swan Lake, Sleeping Beauty and Don Quixote. The company's latest additions, twins Dmitry and Vitaly Mikhailov, have aroused a lot of interest on this tour. These handsome young 19-year-olds say there hasn't been a day when they have been apart, and their dancing is particularly similar.
And probably this is it might be a very good find for a ballet stage master.
What, because they can so easily replace one with
That's
the other
right.
if injury or...
That's right, not an injury, but they just dance in the same fashion.
The contest will be held on the tiny island of Tavarua near Fiji. Mark, currently ranked number 17 in the world, made the cut of 16 when Sydney's Barton Lynch had to withdraw because of injury.
Only the top 16 surfers in the world will be competing in it. There's no points, which there are in the normal events, and it'll run on a system where the top surfer, which is Tom Curran, will go in against number 16, which in my case that'll be me in this event. And it's on an island called Tavarua, and apparently it's about 20 minutes off the coast of Fiji, and there's two incredibly perfect lefts that break right next to the island. There's one that breaks directly in front of it, and then there's one that's about 2 miles out to sea, and they take you out there in a boat and you surf out in the middle of the ocean. And we'll all be staying in these grass huts, which are sort of right on the point overlooking the surf.
The former 4 times world champ has not competed in a full-on contest in 4 months and says the almost perfect waves will be a good warm-up for the forthcoming Australian circuit, which includes Surffest.
Apparently, from what I hear, the wave is like it's when it's good, the wave's big and there's a lot of open face, so it really lends itself to a lot of carving manoeuvres on the face, and that's sort of the strong point in my surfing. So I'm hoping that it's big and not too hollow, and if it's like that, I think I can do pretty well.
The Victorian Whiz Kids will include Jason Lyons, Nigel Alderton and 16-year-old Lee Adams, who is already a 2-time Australian junior champion. South Australia's Shane Parker, the current state junior champion, along with teammate Darryl Bramford, will also be taking part. New South Wales will be represented by multinational and state champion Chris Watson, former top junior Todd Wilshire, as well as Brian Nixon and Craig Boyce. Sidecars, Formula 500s, super sedans and stock cars will also be featured, with special interest in the sidecar division with the return of the Treloar brothers, Phil McCurtain and Doc Fulp.
It's images from around Port Stephens that have particularly fired the imagination of painter Lionel Smith. In an unusual exhibition which sees 3 very different artists exhibiting together at the Seaview Gallery in Whitebridge, Smith brings his world of the ocean to the public. Harbour scenes, boats and a windswept ocean are all prominent subjects. It's quite the opposite for painter Margaret Wright, whose light watercolours are a sharp contrast to Smith's heavier acrylics. Margaret Wright's work shows incredible diversity, from realistic sketches to her very abstract watercolours, and her images are of land, not the sea. A highlight of the exhibition is the work of potter Rosemary Momsen, who is exhibiting a wide range of bowls and platters. Recently, she has discovered the delights of working with coloured slips, and consequently her work has taken a new direction.
I used to work more with casseroles and teapots and such, where the form, the shape, the lid, the handle was a big part of the decoration. But with the platters and bowls, you've just got the very plain open surface, and then that allows you more freedom with your decoration.
Darby is the only New South Wales player in the 5-man national team. At the age of 56, he's been playing for 29 years, the last 16 as secretary-manager of the Cahaiba Bowling Club. He played singles for Australia in England back in 1982 and 3 years ago won the Australian Champion of State Champions title. But Darby says his selection in this Australian team is his greatest honour.
Fantastic it is to be selected for any particular representative game, but to be selected for Australia is unreal.
You're also skipper of the triples and the fours team.
Yes, which is an honour. I've been skipper for many years, of course, but when you get selected for Australia, you don't expect to be skipping, you expect to be playing probably beneath somebody else, so I feel very honoured.
Darby will be kept on his toes at Lay, playing 26 games in 13 days. Despite the heavy schedule, he says the Aussies should do well.
Well, that's up in the air a bit. The greens will be, to say the least, much different to here, I believe, and whether we can handle them will be the fact, in the actual end result. I don't know whether they're as good as ours, but they told me they're pretty good, so hopefully we'll do well.
Darby's selection in the Australian team will also see him compete at the World Championships in New Zealand during January. Along with Ken Williams, Dennis Katunarich, Trevor Morris and Bill Wayne, the Australians will be a formidable combination.
During their 80-day Australasian tour, the company has performed every night. This schedule has proved so demanding that the dancers have had little time to do anything else. Today, however, was an exception. The company, courtesy of NBN, were treated to a day of sightseeing, visiting the Port Stephens and Colburn Valley areas. When we caught up with the dancers at Hungerford Hill Winery, they appeared relaxed and appreciative of the opportunity to do some sightseeing.
It is a very beautiful landscape and we enjoyed looking at it out of the bus window.
Вообще в Австралии очень интересная природа, очень красивая.
So generally we think that Australian nature is very unusual and very beautiful.
The dancers say they have enjoyed their tour in Australia, but are looking forward to going home after such a hectic schedule. They also say that with them they will take home many fond memories of Australia.
They will remember the warm reception of the audiences and the nature of Australia and also koala and kangaroos.
This is how 25-year-old Rick Melder from Hamilton found his silver blue 1986 model Honda Accord parked outside the Crown and Anchor. A branch from a 10-metre tree on the footpath had broken off, crashed onto the roof of the vehicle and then landed on the boot. Rick was working inside the hotel as a chef when a workmate witnessed the accident. The $30,000 car was purchased only last year and luckily for Rick is fully insured. But he says if there are any loopholes in the policy, he'll be knocking on the door of the Newcastle City Council to foot the damage bill. This year was the first time the Newcastle branch of the Australian Institute of Management decided to have a major award from the 6 finalists. The nominees were selected by a judging panel of Professor Keith Morgan and Dr Wedge Paradise from the Hunter Valley Research Foundation. The 3 Encouragement and 2 Highly Commended awards were presented to individuals from the region who have shown responsibility and dedication in their chosen fields. But the major Howard Smith Management Award went to Glenn Fewings, who began as a graduate chemical engineer with Coal and Allied and was recently promoted to plant preparation supervisor at Hexham. Glenn's prize was $1,000 to help further his training. Guest speaker of the evening was Managing Director of the State Bank of New South Wales, John O'Neill, who was recently named Young Executive of the Year. 16 years after starting his career as a bank clerk, Mr O'Neill believes the secret to management success is learning to control both financial and interpersonal skills, and that the recognition of young achievers could either make or break a career.
Too often, skills aren't recognised at an early enough level. I mean, so often young people have to rely on luck or fate or patronage to get to the top, whereas awards like this give young people great motivation. It spurs them on to continue on the track they're proceeding upon. Without that sort of recognition, I think a lot of them would lose the impetus they've got and perhaps not turn out to be the managers we hope they would be.
With a population of just over 4,000 people, nothing too dramatic happens very often in one of the Upper Hunter's prosperous country towns, except on the sporting field. It's no secret that between the sports of rugby league and rugby union there lies traditional rivalry. But here in Scone last year that disappeared when, in two separate accidents in each code and a day apart, resulted in tragedy for two local sporting heroes. This is the last game that Philip Everly played as a hooker for the Scone Rugby League team in July last year. He never recovered from this scrum that left the 22-year-old paralysed from the neck down. Only a day before on the rugby union field, 21-year-old Adam Cliff was also tragically injured. Both are now quadriplegics. The only available funding from the government through sporting accidents is $90,000 to cover all medical, living and ongoing expenses such as house adjustments. And that's when it was decided to start an appeal, chaired by Jeremy Rolfe, also paralysed after a car accident. The target was set at $200,000, but because of overwhelming support has far exceeded that amount.
Firstly, we wrote to every rugby union and rugby league club in Australia asking for donations, and we had replies from more than 170 of them. Secondly, there were two big benefit dinners held, one in Scone and one in Sydney. And thirdly, just by community activities within the town of Scone, people and organisations and sporting clubs holding functions to raise money.
For Philip, life has continued with his wife Mary and young family. Although he's had to dramatically adjust to his new lifestyle, Philip says his love for the game will stand firm, but hopes proposed rule changes to rugby league will soon be introduced to avoid the chances of another tragic scrum.
Well, I feel at the moment they're really trying to change the rules of the scrum and try and teach people the dangers that are in the game in the ways they can prevent them, and that's by teaching them different skills and teaching them to do their proper exercises, etc.
Sister Ford, do come in.
Bernard Hawkins is head of the Education Department at the Swinburne Institute of Technology in Melbourne. For the past 12 months he's headed a team from the Institute and Newcastle College of Advanced Education developing what's been labelled a flight simulator for nurses, the first ever of its kind.
The two aspects of the natural language interface and the use of intelligent tutoring, all on the one system, we understand is the first in the world.
The system uses state-of-the-art laser video discs to produce a patient that not only answers the trainee nurse's inquiries, but also responds to her manner. For example, if questions are too blunt, a patient may never tell you what's wrong.
There's no problem, really. I think it's all a mistake.
And if at any time the trainees find themselves out of their depth, expert advice is always at hand. While this package deals particularly with inconsonants, Mr Hawkins says it has opened up a whole range of possibilities.
There's no limit. No, now we've developed the superstructure and the computer programs. We feel that it's just a question of exploring how far we can go with it.
The developers of the system have concentrated on creating patient responses which are as lifelike as possible. For example, would Mrs Rossi grant us an interview?
I think it's all a mistake. You shouldn't have bothered to come. Lucy will take you out. I'm sorry you've been put to all this trouble. Thank you for coming.
If she doesn't want to talk with you, I guess there's nothing I can do about it. If you'd like to follow me, I'll show you the way out.
Last night, the group responsible for the bold plan officially presented it to the public for inspection, with a launch dinner for local politicians and business leaders. The study is the work of third-year students in the Advanced Management course at the Maitland TAFE. As a final project, the 12 students had to compile a fully detailed feasibility study on any topic. For much of the year, the Kaluda Casino Country Club has been their dream.
We're very excited about it. I think it would be a very positive thing for Maitland, especially for the Hunter Valley too, in the current economic climate. There's a lot of development out in the Pacolban area, but Maitland really didn't have anything, so we decided we'd give them something.
What began as a project may in fact eventually be the basis of a major development in the Maitland area. Monica Partridge says the study has already attracted much interest, including inquiries from a Japanese developer.
Well, I took it to Sydney a couple of weeks ago upon completing the study and had it assessed by a developer down there, and he was thrilled with it. He's had one recently done for himself for a development currently being built at Terrigal, and it cost him $45,000, so we were thrilled to think that ours even stood next to that one.
Any chance of this one making a bit of money for those people who worked on it?
We'd like to think so, but of course it all rests on whether there's going to be a developer interested enough to pay us anything for it.
Changing work practices is not an easy task. Recent battles in the coal industry and at the dockyard show just how painful and inflamed situations can become. But Hexham Engineering has negotiated an agreement that may help the company secure more flexibility and at the same time reduce industrial disputes. A key feature of the agreement is a new skills development program, whereby employees will get paid more for training to improve their skills. Another important feature is a dispute settlement procedure, which the company hopes will cut down on strikes. The agreement still has to go before the Conciliation and Arbitration Commission, but the company is hopeful that it will be accepted and that it will lead to productivity increases. According to Hexham's Works Manager, Mr Bill Nolan, the agreement has not been easy to attain. It's taken a concerted effort by unions and employers.
The process also involved bringing in an industrial facilitator to get between the two sides. I think both of us were a bit battle-scarred, and it helped having someone new come in, separate us and get us back and talking in a logical manner. One very important part of the process was our employees agreeing to a moratorium period where we could talk about factors and changes and all sorts of new things in a non-aggressive environment.
Coal and Allied Management, union representatives and former Richmond Vale railway workers met at Hexham today to discuss the future of the railway. Railway workers have been battling to maintain the line to haul coal, while Coal and Allied has opted to cart coal by road. As a result, rail workers were retrenched. They then commandeered a steam locomotive for 3 weeks in an attempt to make Coal and Allied change its mind. The company then sacked the 8 men for willful misconduct and withheld more than $100,000 in termination pay. After 5 hours of discussions today, the workers will get their money and may still work on the railway. Although the men still oppose coal haulage by road, it's been agreed the line won't be used to haul coal. Instead, the men plan to approach the Hunter Development Board to set up a trust to operate the railway as a tourist venture. They plan to man the tourist train themselves and hope to have steam trains puffing along the Richmond Vale line again within a month.